This author points out some really interesting things regarding lunar eclipses and solar eclipses as well. It says, beginning on page 101, causes of solar and lunar eclipses. A solar eclipse is a result simply of the moon passing between the sun and the observer on Earth. But that an eclipse of the moon arises from a shadow of the Earth is a statement in every respect because unproved, unsatisfactory. The Earth has been proved to be without orbital or axial motion, and therefore it could never come between the sun and the moon. The Earth is also proved to be a plane, always underneath the sun and moon, and therefore to speak of its intercepting the light of the sun and thus casting its own shadow on the moon is to say that which is physically impossible. And this also gets into the whole issue of self-illumination. And we've talked about that in previous shows, but the ancient texts do not in any way support the idea that the moon is receiving her light from the sun. It says that she's giving or causing her own light. So the phases are internal, not external. Dr. Robinham goes on to say, besides the above difficulties or incompatibilities, many cases are on record of the sun and moon being eclipsed when both were above the horizon. That's a big problem. The sun, the earth, and the moon not in a straight line, but the earth below the sun and moon, out of the reach or direction of both, and yet a lunar eclipse has occurred. Is it possible that a shadow of the earth could be thrown upon the moon when sun, earth, and moon were not in the same line? The difficulty has been met by assuming the influence of refraction, as in the following quotations. And he's citing somebody here. It says, on some occasions, the horizontal refraction amounts to 36 or 37 minutes, and generally to about 33 minutes, which is equal to the diameter of the sun or moon, and therefore the whole disk of the sun or moon will appear above the horizon, both at rising and setting, although actually below. This is the reason that the full moon has sometimes been seen above the horizon before the sun was set. A remarkable instance of this kind was observed at Paris on the 19th of July, 1750, when the moon appeared visibly eclipsed, while the sun was distinctly to be seen above the horizon. That's a quote from Astronomy and Astronomical Instruments by George G. Gary. Another quote here. On the 20th of July, 1837, the moon appeared to rise eclipsed before the sun had set. The same phenomenon was observed on the 20th of September, 1717. That's from McCulloch's Geography, page 85. Let's see, he's got another one here. In the lunar eclipses of July 17th, 1590, November 3rd, 1648, June 16th, 1666, and May 26, 1668, the moon rose eclipsed, whilst the sun was still apparently above the horizon. Those horizontal eclipses were noticed as early as the time of Pliny. That's according to the Illustrated London Almanac for 1864, the astronomical articles in which are by James Glaisher, ESQ of the Greenwich Royal Observatory, page 99. Another citation. On the 17th of January, 1870, a similar phenomenon occurred, and again in July of the same year. That's the reference there is the Daily Telegraph, July 16th, 1870. The only explanation which has been given of this phenomenon is the refraction caused by the Earth's atmosphere. This at first sight is a plausible and fairly satisfactory solution, but on carefully examining the subject, it is found to be utterly inadequate. And those who have recourse to it cannot be aware that the refraction of an object and that of a shadow are in opposite directions. An object by refraction is bent upwards, but the shadow of any object is bent downwards, as will be seen by the following very simple experiment. Take a plain white shallow basin and place it 10 or 12 inches from a light in such a position that the shadow of the edge of the basin touches the center of the bottom. hold a rod vertically over and on the edge of the shadow to denote its true position. Now let water be gradually poured into the basin, and the shadow will be seen to recede or shorten inwards and downwards. But if a rod or a spoon is allowed to rest, with its upper end towards the light and the lower end in the bottom of the vessel, it will be seen as the water is poured in to bend upwards, thus proving that if refraction operated at all, it would do so by elevating the moon above its true position and throwing the Earth's shadow downwards or directly away from the moon's surface. Hence it is clear that a lunar eclipse by a shadow of the Earth is an utter impossibility. The moon's entire surface, or that portion of it which is presented to the Earth, has also been distinctly seen during the whole time of a total lunar eclipse. This is entirely incompatible with the doctrine that an eclipse of the moon is the result of a shadow of the Earth passing over its surface. Mr. Walker, who observed the lunar eclipse on March 19, 1848, near Collumpton, says, "The appearances were as usual till 20 minutes past 9. At that period, and for the space of the next hour, instead of an eclipse, or the shadow umbra of the Earth being the cause of the total obscurity of the moon, the whole face of that body became very quickly and most beautifully illuminated, and assumed the appearance of the glowing heat of fire from the furnace, rather tinged with a deep red, the whole disk of the moon being as perfect with light as if there had been no eclipse whatever. The moon positively gave good light from its disk during the total eclipse." That's from Philosophical Magazine number 220 from August 1848. The following case, although not exactly similar to the last, is worth recording here as showing that some other cause existed than the Earth's shadow to produce a lunar eclipse. He cites somebody here saying, "Extraordinary phenomena attending the eclipse. On Saturday evening, February 27th, 1858, at Brussels, the eclipse was seen by several English philosophers who happened to be present. It was attended by a very remarkable appearance, which Dr. Foster said was wholly inexplicable on any laws of natural philosophy with which he was acquainted. The moment before contact, a small dusky spot appeared on the moon's surface, and during the whole of the eclipse, a reddish-brown fringe, or penumbra, projected above the shadow of the Earth. Another thing still more remarkable was the apparent irregularity of the edge of the shadow. 3 persons, one of them an astronomer, were witnesses of these curious phenomena, which no law of refraction can in any way explain." That's a quote from Morning Star of Wednesday, March 3rd, 1858. The author continues, "The several cases above advanced are logically destructive of the notion that an eclipse of the moon arises from a shadow of the Earth. As before stated, the Earth is proved to be a plane without motion, and always several hundred miles below the sun and moon, and cannot, by any known possibility, come between them. It cannot, therefore, intercept the light of the sun and throw its own shadow upon the moon. If such a thing were a natural possibility, how could the moon continue to shine during the whole or any considerable part of the period of its passage through the dark shadow of the Earth?